People coming in already. Early birds.
Oh my gosh, loads of
Early
people.
bird catches the worm.
Evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Jasper. I'm sure you are probably sick of seeing me. I've been all over the Instagram stories recently, but I'm a product manager here at Carv, and I'm going to be taking you through how to get the most out of your Carv this season. And I'm joined with Amelia as well.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I head up the Carv community. So if you're a member of the community on Facebook and you have submitted a post with a slightly rambling response, that is me. I hope they've been somewhat useful. And I'll be in the background answering some questions that you pop in the Q&A as we go. So any questions you have, keep dropping them in there and I'll answer some of them. I'll keep some of them to chat about with Jasper at the end. And also, if we don't get around to it, because I think there might be more than we can cover, just head to the Carv community on Facebook. Carv Skiers Community is its name. It's also linked in our Instagram bio, and you can ask it there, and we will get back to you shortly. I think we might have to do a few more intros, Jasper. More people coming in.
So, well, while we're waiting for some more people to join, I'm going to launch our first poll, because what we're going to be doing for this is throughout the presentation, just to keep it engaging, we're going to throw little polls and questions at you that you can answer through Zoom. So the first poll that we're going to ask is just a nice, simple one. We want to find out where people are joining from. So that should be popping up on screen for you now. Yeah, it's obviously hard to tell because it's evening and it's winter and it's probably dark in most places at the minute, unless of course you are calling us from Australia or New Zealand, which I'll be very impressed if some people are doing. But I'm actually currently calling us from Austria. I was meant to be in our London office with a nice backdrop with some good studio lighting and the Carv logo in the background, but unfortunately I wasn't able to fly home today because I tested positive for COVID. Which I'm fine for, but yeah, pretty disappointing, has meant that I've tried to improvise and give a better background with some skis in the back. So we're still on brand, but yeah, we won't let that put a dampener on the event. Okay, so let's launch that poll and get your responses coming in. So that should be coming up for you there. Brilliant. United States and Canada are flying out in front, which is not surprising. This time zone is definitely more flattering to people in those locations. And Australia and New Zealand, to be fair, it's about midday, I guess now. Are
there any from Europe yet, Jasper?
So there is currently one from the UK and one from Europe. I'm guessing that's us two, to be perfectly honest.
Who would have thought that only we would get up at 3 a.m. for this?
Yeah, unsurprising. Okay, I'm going to close that off now. We're about 90%. So results are in. We have 70, last minute change, 72% US, 23% Canada, 2% Australia. So we've got 3 people. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Gelly might have been one of those catching up with us. And we have 2 from Japan as well. Awesome. So thank you so much, everyone. Let's get into the session then. So first of all, I gave you a quick brief intro. I'm Jasper, but I am a product manager at Carv. So what that essentially means is I look at how we can best coach you to be a better skier. Like, that is Carv's ultimate mission, is to improve your skiing. So I will work with top instructors, people like Tom Gelly, for instance, who a few of you might have seen some of his content with before, to work out how we can best utilize Carv's coaching system, which I'll get into in a second, to take existing things that are in the skiing world to try and use that data analysis to help make you an even better skier. So that's a little bit about what I do, and Amelia as well.
I've already given a bit of an intro for some of you who joined a bit early, but I head up the Carv community on Facebook, the Carv Skiers community. So if you've been asking any questions in there over the past few months, I've been the one typing out those responses and trying to help you all get the most out of Carv, get the most out of your skiing, and setting up the instructors we've now got working in the background to give you tips through the community as well. If you're not a member, do join, because any questions that we don't get to answer today, I'll be in the Q&A box answering them throughout the session. So put things in there. But if we don't get around to your question, please just join the community and post it in there, and we'll get back to you in probably a day or so, because I'm going to have a big sleep after this.
Okay, well, that's enough about us. And I would actually like to hand over to you guys and hear a little bit more about what you guys are interested in achieving this season with Carv. So it's not just me talking to an empty room, because I feel like that's something I'm going to be doing a lot of for the next 10 days. So this next poll that's going to be popping up, I'd like to know what your goals are for the season. So submit your answers and we'll see what you're interested in achieving. Yeah, definitely something I'm working on this season is getting more confidence and more terrain. One of the things I found from using Carv was just highlighting how as soon as it gets steep, I sit back seat, and it's a pretty normal thing to do. You know, you are going down a steep piste, your body's natural instinct is to lean back. But through using Carv more and more, focusing on my balance, using some of the different balance monitors and different modes, it's really started to improve. But that's definitely something I will be focusing on this season. And it looks like quite a popular option from all of you guys as well. Right, we are about 90%, so end that. So skiing more efficiently with excellent form is the top result. Second most is perfecting your skiing technique across multiple turn types. And third is building confidence in more terrain. So yeah, looks like very similar interests. And lots of people are interested in improving the parallel skiing as well. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how Carv works on the multiple different ability levels, because it's not just something for those pure advanced skiers as well. So, all right, that was question 1. Amelia, over to you for question 2.
I'm going to whiz through these because I can already see we're chatting on. Poll number 2, how many days have you been able to use Carv so far? I know we build this as getting the most out of your first day with Carv, but I am sneakily sure that a lot of you have had a bit more Carv experience than that. So pop your answers in, and Jasper, update us on.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's a bit of a mix. So we got about 50-50 people who haven't used it yet, which is great. That's what this will really help you with. And then about 50% is 7+ days, and a few spatterings of 1 to 2 and 3 to 7. Yeah, great. That's brilliant. So, you know, good to see you've got some veteran Carv users coming in who've used us for a whole bunch of times this season, and maybe even past seasons. And then all those new people, this should be really, really helpful for you. Cool. Okay, next question. A bit of a fun one. Something that is close to my heart. To après or not to après? That's the question. You know, we all enjoy skiing, but you know, it's a fun thing, right? And maybe it's slightly different in the States, but yeah, definitely out in Austria, I think they say Austrian après is the best, which might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but they do have the best cheesy German après songs, I have to say.
By the way, wherever you're from, if there's a different word for après or bar or drinks after, please put it in the Q&A because I am intrigued.
Good point. Very French-centric words, to be fair. Well, unsurprisingly, the most popular response so far is both. So close to my heart, everyone. But first lift all the way, 26%. You got to raise a glass to a new high score, 25%, and 50% of you have said both. All right. Brill. Okay. Well, those are the polls. I feel like I know you all very well now, especially your après choices. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to cover off a bit of a tour of Carv. So I'm going to take you through the experience of using it from unboxing, basically. So before you've even gotten onto the mountain, so that you have a great experience when you actually get out there. Then we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough of the app, where I'm going to talk to you about what to do on day 1, what modes to use, those sorts of things. Then we're going to have a chat with Jim, who is a veteran Carv user who I've spoken to before, who has had some great improvements by using Carv. We're going to find out a little bit about what he's done to improve. We'll then hand it over to you for a bit of a Q&A. And that's what the question box is for. So Amelia will be also replying to those as we're going. But, you know, keep submitting those, and we'll choose a few of those that we'll be able to answer in more detail.
Oh, well, I'm going to disappear off into the background to answer some of your questions and leave it with Jasper for the future.
Thanks, Amelia. And then we will have a ski-focused yoga session with Christine, who is a CSA level 4 instructor and a Carv user who has been teaching ski yoga for the past 11 years. So feels like a pretty good agenda. I can already tell I'm running over a little bit and Amelia's going to be mad at me. So let's get into it. So first stop on the Carv Grand Tour is I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the Carv coaching system works, just to start off, especially helpful for all those new people. So the Carv coaching system essentially consists of our ultra thin inserts that have 36 pressure sensors in each, as well as different motion sensors as well. That data then travels through the cord to the Bluetooth tracker. That then transmits all of that raw sensor data to the phone, where you can use the iOS or Android app to interpret it. Now, all of that raw data is going to the phone, and it's then on the device that we then process that and add our machine learning and our different algorithms that then turn that into something that's actually helpful for coaching you. As you can probably imagine, just getting all that raw sensor data is going to be very difficult to interpret. So what we've done is we have taken that and we've looked at how different classification systems exist around the world. And in skiing, you generally have these 4 categories. So balance, edging, rotary, and pressure. And you might hear that sometimes called BURP, and that's just the acronym for it. But within each of those categories, we split those into submetrics that allow you to understand how you're performing within each of those categories. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail in a second. Then, depending on your ability level, we will weight those differently. So, edging might not be as important at all levels, whereas pressure is very important at all levels. So all of those are then used to then give you a ski IQ score, which is a representative score of your ability level, dependent on what type of turn you're doing and things like that. So if you're new, you might be wondering, well, what is ski IQ? So ski IQ is a factor of all of those 4 things that I've talked about there. And within ski IQ, you will get a score, and your score will then sit within one of these ability levels. So what we see is we have about a normal distribution of people around the 90 to 125 range. That's where most of our users sit. So when you get out for the first time and you get those scores, these levels give you a little bit of an indication of where you sit in that spectrum. And, we don't want people to feel bad when you're getting those scores that are lower down, because you will start progressing really quickly and you will start moving up those ranks. And that's ultimately a really fun thing to do. So this is going to be something interesting to find out for a lot of those new people. But having a look at these ability levels now, I'd like to find out what ability level you are aiming for this season. So I'm going to launch a quick poll now to find out what people are aiming for. We've tried to give them quite fun names, but it'd be great to see what you're interested in. All right, so I myself am currently just in the Mountain Master. I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, definitely my ambition this season is obviously to try and get to Grim Ripper, which is the next level. But yeah, I'm definitely not super consistent on all slopes yet, so it's going to take a lot of work to get there. All right, results are in. Okay, the winning and the most popular goal this season is to get to be a Carv connoisseur. So that's a 125 to 140. Carving connoisseur is quite a nice, badge. It's gold. Yeah, I don't blame you. That is then followed by very closely Carv Cadet, which is 15 to 125. Third most popular option is then Mountain Master. Awesome, very ambitious crowd. I like it. All right, now on to the next section. So I'm going to go for the rather ambitious act right now, and it wouldn't be a remote webinar without someone trying to do a live demo, and hopefully it all goes well. So for this next section, I'm going to be sharing my screen so that I can take you through the app and how the different parts of it work whether you're a new customer or an existing customer. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so first step for all those new people, and we've had people signing up to the event that have literally just bought Carv. So if you've just bought Carv, first thing you'll need to do is go to the App Store or the Play Store, search for Carv and download it. This is something I recommend you do as soon as you purchase Carv or as soon as you receive that activation email. If you're new, then you'll have to enter your activation code after you sign up. Then the first screen you'll see is the homepage, and it will look something like this. Now, at this point, you can actually still get quite a lot of value out of Carv without actually having skied with it yet. So what I'm going to be taking you through now is how to use the demo data that we have here to start getting a feel for the different metrics. So on iPhone and Android, you can click this section at the top to view sample data. Now, this is how a ski day will tend to look. You'll have your map at the top, and you'll see your different runs and the different data that you have at the bottom. It's then split into run sections and lift sections. And within each, you can actually drill down into that run, find out a little bit more about how you're doing. So you'll see those burp scores are coming back up again. And for each run that you use in free ski, which I'll get onto in a second, which is one of our most popular modes, you will get a tip. You then also get all of your standard data about time, distance, elevation, speed, all those sort of standard things you get in a lot of apps. But the Carv system really comes in when you start looking at the breakdown of these burp scores. So within each section, you have submetrics. So
Jasper?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Jim. I just want to pop in. I'm not seeing your screen change. I don't know if anything else. There we go. I see it now. You're at balance.
There we go. Are we back?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Thanks, Jim. You're a hero. Yeah, as I said, wouldn't be a live demo without it. Okay, so within the balance section, let me just go back. So you click on your sample activity, you see your run, you tap on it, and then you go into balance here. So within the start of turn, you have how forward you're moving at the start of the turn. End of turn, again, it's after the apex, how much you're moving back, and then topple as well. You can then go into each of these different ones and see the scores there. I'll not go into every metric because that's something that you can go and explore yourself. But if we choose one, for instance, early edging, you can then go in and you get a little bit of an explanation of the metric, how we measure it, what good looks like. And you also start to see things like a target. So with each metric, you get a personalized target. And that is something that is based on your recent skiing so that we are setting things that are realistic for you. So whether you are a Carv Cadet, a Mountain Master, Grim Ripper, whatever ability level you are, you'll always know what you should be trying to strive for each metric. Within each metric, you'll also have a video. So 10 out of the 13 metrics have videos explaining how to score better and how to do good skiing with that metric. For edging and pressure, you'll also have these heat maps that allow you to see, how much edge angle you're getting through different parts of the turn. And then pressure as well, how much pressure is on the different feet that you have as well. So that's a little bit about the sample data. One of the next things that I would recommend you have a look at is setting Carv up in your boots. So on the homepage, we have these setup guides. Now, these are nice little looping videos that are designed to be easy for you to follow so you can get Carv set up in your boots. We've tried to make this as frictionless a process as possible, but sometimes getting your liner in and out of a boot can be difficult. This is easier to do at home and a lot more difficult to do when you're waiting on the lift. So I do recommend you do this now before you get out. And it's also really fun to get your boots on and start playing with the pressure data that you can see as well. If you are renting boots still, that's completely fine. I'd recommend probably doing that when you get them fitted and when you rent them so that you're not doing it in the lift or on the mountain. So that's a little bit about setup. I'm going to launch a quick poll here because I'm interested to find out actually. So I'd love to know how many of you actually have Carv set up in your boots already. Okay. All right. So while you're doing that, I'm going to now switch over to my other account. Okay, results are in. Oh, good class. 75% of you are ready to go. That's great. Yeah, that is absolutely what I'd recommend. Get set up now if you can, if you have your own boots at home. Play around with the pressure sensors. You'll see a little heat map of your pressure going through the boot as you're moving your pressure around. And it's just really cool to see and get a feeling for what that underfoot pressure looks like. So 75% have said yes. 24% have said I haven't tried yet. And we have 4 people who said they tried, but they had some questions. So look, we know that this process can have, some difficulties of taking your boot in and out, and you might have some questions about where it goes and things like that. If you have any questions at all, please, please, please reach out to our CS team. Sorry, excuse me. So our CS team will be on hand to answer any questions you have. And they're super helpful. They'll know so much about how to get these set up in boots, and they've seen almost everything at this point. And if something goes wrong at any point, we'll give you a warranty unit. So they are on hand. They are trying to help. Just, get in touch. Cool. All right, so that's the poll. Now I am back logged in. Let me share my screen again. And apologies for my voice, everyone. Okay, that is sharing again. Okay, cool. Now I'm logged into my actual account here. I was out skiing a couple of days ago, so I now have some data from my recent days. So one of the most valuable things I found was looking at your personalized focus areas. So after you've skied for a day of Carv, end of the day, you get back to your chalet, you're in the car, you're on the bus on the way home. Have a look at your personalized focus areas. So these are the 2 metrics that Carv picks for you that are going to be most impactful for your skiing. So for me, toppling and end of turn balance are the things that it chooses for me. Now from this, you can then go in, click show me how, and you get to those videos and metrics, and you can look at your progress as well. So these are really helpful places that you can go in, get a bit more data analysis, understand how you're performing over time, look at what your target is, and try and understand a bit more about how to improve. Within these sections as well, you'll start to get recommended drills. So for me, for end of turn balance, it's recommending fast turns and balance. So these are 2 of the Carv drills that we recommend. You can then go in and you can choose to use these. So within Carv, we've got a few modes. So free ski is the main mode. So you can access the Carv modes by tapping the record button at the bottom in the tab bar. And then you can choose which mode you want to use. So free ski is the default. It's what most people use. And on your first day skiing, that's what I'd recommend you start with. So you're getting out there on the slopes. You have put Carv in your boots. You're all set up and you're ready to go. I'd recommend starting recording when you get into the car park or when you're at the bottom of the lift. It's nice to have it track all the lifts for the whole day. And Carv will only start actually tracking your skiing when you actually start skiing, because it detects that from the motion with the insoles. So you can record in free ski, and the way free ski works is it's like having an instructor sort of in your ear. They're the subtlest modes that we do, and basically you ski, and when you get on a chairlift, you will then get an audio tip, and it also tells you your ski IQ. So it'll tell you if things are getting better, if things are getting worse, and it's got a little tip that will help you to improve that one focus area for you at a time. So that's how free ski works. I'd recommend for your first day in the slopes, tapping record, starting free ski, warming up for the day, doing a couple runs in free ski, maybe do that all morning until you stop for lunch, and then have a look into the data that I talked about earlier. Then when it comes to what I'd start to do next is looking at the end of the day, you know, choosing your focus areas, thinking about what drills you want to do next. So this is a great way to choose which drill will be good for you. You know, Carv has quite a few different modes, and I'm not going to get a chance to go into all of them in this presentation. But if you're wondering ever, what should I do next to improve? These personalized focus areas on the homepage and the drills that it recommends are a great place to start. If on your first day you're feeling ambitious and you want to have a little play around and explore some different modes, one of my favorite things to do is carving training. So this mode gives you real-time feedback that tells you what is a good turn and what is a bad turn. And when I started using Carv, that was a real light bulb moment for me. It allowed me to know, oh, that was good, I'll repeat that. And that was bad. Oh, okay, I can see the difference. And it's a real good way to shortcut that sort of muscle memory. So carving training is a really fun one to do. You'll start moving up the levels, and that's something that is quite fun. There are also modes like the monitors. So Carv monitors basically read out one of the metrics after every turn. So I mentioned I struggle with balance. 4-AF ratio is something that really helps me. So it will tell you how centered your turn was. So you want to get in a good centered stance and get a score between 45 and 60. But as I mentioned, we're not going to have time to go into all of those. That's a really quick summary of a few of them that I think are quite fun to use. We will be doing further webinars that will look at all of these different modes in more detail. But to recap, first day, start in free ski. If you're feeling adventurous, carving training is quite fun to try out. Balance training is quite fun, and have a look at maybe some of the monitors. But, you know, free ski is a really great mode that will just give you a lot of little tips that you can put into practice. And then as you start getting those focus areas at the end of day one and beyond, those are the things you should start coming back to at the end of each day to know what to do next. So that's a little bit about how to use it on the mountain, how to interact with your data. But there's another great feature that we just added recently, which is the training tab. So, you know, this is something you can start using now before you even start skiing to start improving before you actually ski. So we have pre-season training content that will look at hip focus workouts, skiing mobility course, and we'll have the course that we're about to do with Christine as well at the end of today, that are great things to do beforehand that are going to help you to have better leg strength, better flexion. That's going to mean you're going to have a better time on that first day out. There are also these great technique teardowns that Tom Gelly has been doing with us, that as real users that are using Carv, that are submitting their videos to the community, that are then being teared down by a top instructor. So these are really great to watch, and you'll start to find that over time, you'll be like, actually, I know I'm not great at toppling. Well, this is the video for me. So there's a whole bunch of content in here. I won't go through it all, but this is great stuff that you can just consume now, really build up your knowledge, build up your strength so that when you get out there, you'll have a great day. So that has been a very, very quick whistle-stop tour of the app. I see that a bunch of questions have been submitted, so I will be getting onto those in a second with Amelia. Right, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. So here's a little recap. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be sending out a full recording of the session, so you can hear my croaky voice again, but you'll be able to go back and see this if it's helpful for you. So now, before we get into the Q&A, I am very excited to introduce Jim. So let me stop sharing my screen, and we will get on to the fun part. So Jim is a veteran Carv user. He's been with us for a couple of seasons now. And he is based, his local resort is actually Mount Bachelor out in Oregon. With so many people dialing in from the US, I imagine we've probably got a few people who know it well. But the reason I invited Jim to speak to you all today is because Jim has had an amazing journey with Carv, and I wanted you to hear firsthand from someone who has really put Carv through its paces over the last few seasons. So now, Jim, to get into it, I actually had a look at some of your Carv data from your very first sessions, and Jim allowed me to do this for the record, just to see how far you've come. And for your first few runs with Carv, you actually got an average ski IQ of 112. But now, after using Carv for a little while, I understand your current highest ski IQ is 137, which is just 3 points off Mountain Master, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, I mean, amazing score. Jim, if you could, I'd love if you could tell me a little bit about how Carv helped you to make that improvement.
Well, hey, Jasper, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me in here.
No worries.
Carv really helped me from the standpoint I was able to find kind of where my weaknesses were. It was providing data back, like, I really, especially like fore aft data and the edging and pressure and things like that. It allowed me, I could hear it from an instructor, or I could hear it from a coach. Hey, you need to do this. You need to get more forward. And, I'm giving the typical student answer. I am forward. I don't know what you're talking about. And we're like, no, you could be more forward. And Carv allowed me to actually see the data and show me that, no, you're not forward. And you really need to do that, or you're not forward at the right time. You're not back at the right time. And it taught me as I started really using Carv more and more, and really understanding what the data was showing me. I started to understand of when I want to be forward early on in the turn, and where I want to be working more centered throughout the turn and things like that. So that's really, I think, what Carv really, it was able to give me the detailed information of what I needed to do. The coaches and instructors tell me.
We have lost Jasper. Oh, he's back.
There he is.
Back?
Sorry, folks. The internet in our London office is much better, so apologies. Yeah, so you were saying about your fore aft and those sorts of things. I mean, when I started using Carv, I didn't even think much about moving forward at the start of the turn and moving back. I knew that I was backseat, but I didn't realize, when you're meant to stay forward. And then actually, when I started looking at Carv more seriously, I was like, oh, you actually need to move back. Moving back is a good thing, but there's a time for it.
Exactly. That I really learned that too. I had no idea. Everybody had always been, really promoting getting forward. That's all you ever hear. And it was like, and I actually started getting, the scores were going down. And as I really was digging into why, it was because I was too far forward. And which I thought it was the opposite. So yeah. It was really interesting. It really gave me a really good insight into what was actually happening.
Nice. And when we spoke last time, you had quite a fun goal that I quite liked. So I'd love to dig into, I guess, what your goal is. And then when you go out for a day of skiing, how do you set the goals for the day?
Well, so I have a lot of goals. Yeah, fun goals. I think I have a new one, actually.
Okay.
I just saw your ski IQ score of 147. So I think I now want to be a 148. That
makes sense. Yeah, I can't blame you.
No, actually, yes, I'm at a 137. My wife is at a 140. So my goal is to get to 141. And
so not at all competitive.
No, not at all. But her goal is going to be 145 and above. So it's going to be a challenge. So that's a big goal. I want to carve like Tom Gelly. That'd be my ultimate goal. No, I know that's it's not realistic, but actually, that's the direction I want to go. I watched Tom years ago on YouTube and been watching some of the instruction videos, and the guy can carve and ski. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch. And Kaylin Richardson, I've seen her, and I want to get as close to that as I can possibly get. I want to become as good a skier as I can possibly be. And, you see the best skiers on the mountain, a lot of them were racers, and you see that technique and how they can carve. And, it'll make me better all over the mountain. I want to ski anywhere, anytime. And the better you can carve, the better you can ski all over the mountain. So I have pretty lofty goals. And I started doing masters racing about a year and a half ago. And so, I want to be better in the gates. And I've seen Carv helps me through the gates too. It provides the data back, on a GS run or a slalom run. And it's invaluable for that.
Nice. It's interesting. I've heard it from a few people now that focusing on those, refined balance movements and just good general skiing practice on piste has really helped them when they've gone into the other terrains like off piste and things like that, because as soon as you're in deep powder, that's when all of your bad techniques just come out to play and are really exacerbated. So no, awesome. Okay. And what about your next skiing day? When you go out for the single day, how do you choose what am I going to focus on for that day?
I tend to go towards, I'll review my last few days up at the mountain or just the previous day and seeing kind of where I'm weak and where I would like to focus that day. I try not to focus on the same thing every time, like fore aft every single day, right? But what things should I focus on based on the data I'm seeing or the instructor I'm working with? It works together. My instructor also is a very big proponent of Carv, and we can share that data. Hey, this is what you should work on today. So I might be working on outside ski pressure, and it's evident in the Carv data that I need to work on outside ski pressure or less inside ski pressure, things like that. And so then that day, like if I was going out tomorrow, maybe I'll just work on that. So I find a nice, good.
Sorry, guys.
Hey.
He's back. What can you do? Zoom webinar, there's got to be these technical difficulties. How many of you guys are working from home right now?
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, at least this section is mostly you talking, not me. Okay, that's awesome. And yeah, it's really good to hear how you set those goals and what you use to choose how you focus, and reviewing the metrics between friends, and it's a nice opportunity to be a bit competitive on even more things as well. But no, that's awesome. And I guess my last question is a little bit of one directed at how we can help the community, I guess, that are watching today. So what do you wish, or what do you know now that you didn't know when you started using Carv that you wish you did? And what are like little sort of tips or hacks that you've worked out from using Carv over these years?
Interesting. So I guess I would say, what would I have known? So kind of what would I have known, wish I knew, like day one or something like that?
That's the plan.
Probably the number one thing would be to understand where to use Carv and how to use it like properly, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say is on the mountain. And what I came to learn, and I didn't know day one, was really just go find, to get your optimal numbers and optimal metrics, is get to a nice run and a nice groomed blue run, and just kind of work what you're working on that specific run. Because I guess what I didn't know was I'd get off the chairlift, right? And I'd kind of jump on a catch line and I'd cruise down the catch line for a little bit. And I'd hop off into a run and do some turns, hit another catch line, go down to another one of my favorite runs at Bachelor. And then, which I really like to work on my skiing and the Carv metrics on this one specific run. But then I was starting to find that, I really felt like I was really ripping some pretty decent turns there. And my IQ score isn't really where I thought it would be. And I started to figure out, well, the catch lines affecting that, things like that. And I didn't know that day one. And I learned it fairly soon. But it was probably several days or maybe even a week or two but it was fairly soon after I started Carv. But I wish I'd known that day one. It's like, hey, you get to that run that you really want to work on some stuff, you can stop and restart Carv. I know you guys have done some things to kind of alleviate catch lines and things like that you can tell everybody about, but that's what I would do. So now, you know, if it was day one for me, I'd get off the lift, I'd kind of cruise down to my run that I like to work on things on, and then I'd stop Carv, just hit stop and then start it again, and then I'd have a nice fresh run that would give me numbers just for that run. And so, you know, that would be probably my number one thing.
All right. It's good to hear about that, actually. And it was one of the bigger things that we changed this season, because what we used to do with Carv is it would, as you say, it would give you a score for the point when you get off the lift to the point when you get on the lift again, in that whole section. And, you know, we do not ski in perfect resorts where you get off and you go down a straight, nice, big section where it's completely empty. I mean, last year in the pandemic, a lot of slopes were completely empty, but you know, you're quite often you're avoiding a ski school, or maybe there's like a nice little bit off piece you want to just go and hit. And what we do now is we look at your ability level for a run, and then we section those bits off. So if you are clearly avoiding someone, or you're traversing, you're doing a cat track of the catch line, those bits are now excluded, which is a really nice thing for coaching, because yeah, we don't want to coach you on something where, you know, you're not trying. But if you do look at the leaderboard, there is definitely a contingent of people who do the stop-start technique so that they can get those high scores. So yeah, you're not on your own there, but yeah, it's a nice little trick to know. Cool. Right. Okay. Looking at time, I think we're doing okay, maybe slightly over, but we would like to say thank you so much, Jim, for speaking to us today, and hope you have a good season. I'm now going to hand over to you guys and do a bit of Q&A, and I'll hand over to Amelia for this.
Jim, before you leave, we actually have a question for you, if I'm allowed to quickly. Oh, you're back already.
Okay, I'm back.
Someone just asked how you found training mode feedback in the moment. So as it was going on, I'm assuming they feeling, was it overwhelming? Was it actionable? Was asked in the chat.
So for example, like monitor mode, like,
yeah,
right? Yeah. I found it extremely helpful, you know. So I didn't start off using monitor mode right off the bat. I used mostly free ski, but then when I did, you know, I got some headphones or earbuds and I started using monitor mode, and I was using it for turn or edge angle. And I found it extremely valuable because it would read out, hey, this one, you know, 22 degrees. The next, I'm like, what? 22 degree next turn, you know, 30 degrees and things like that. So it was instantaneous feedback, and I found it extremely helpful. I also did it on the fore aft balance, where it would give me the numbers there. And I found it back when you need to be forward. I'm like, I am forward, you know, and so when it would read those numbers, I found it extremely, extremely helpful. So yeah, I think the training modes are fantastic.
Awesome.
Great, thanks, Jim. And thank you for hopping back on for the question.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Thank you.
Cool. I reckon we've got time for a few.
Yeah, we are pushing it on time. But we have had a few interesting ones. We've had a couple come through that are particularly about the logistics of using Carv on the mountain. Maybe we've had a couple of questions. Do I need cell service? Do I need GPS? And what happens if my phone dies? Are all along the similar vein of practicalities. So I wonder if you give a little brief answer to that.
Sure thing. So in terms of cell service, no, we would recommend you download it at home, so it's then downloaded. And when you download that, if it's the first time setting up your Carv units, because they've been shipped from our factory, they might need a software update. But when you actually install the app, it will have that firmware update there. So definitely install at home and try and get that set up beforehand. But then when you're on the mountain, no, you do not need cellular data. So there's a setting that you can turn on in the settings tab, and that dictates how it syncs data to the server. And you can choose that to be Wi-Fi only, which is what it's defaulted to. or you can have that synced over cellular. And that'll mean that will sync to the server, it'll update your position on the leaderboard and things like that. But no, it does not use cellular. So we are reducing battery usage there. And then the second question, I think, was about what happens if my phone dies? No, GPS. GPS was second. So GPS is needed. GPS is used to help us understand where pistes are and where lifts are and things like that. It helps us to understand things like speed and all the rest. So when you're using Carv on the mountain, great. So it will sync with GPS and that will then allow that to work. We have had some people using it on indoor slopes in the UK, and it tends to be the only ones we can get. And not all things work there for GPS and things like that. So it won't track lifts in the same way and it won't track speed, but you can do the stop-start technique that Jim described, and it would allow you to then say, I'm starting now, I'm finishing now, and it'll give you all the rest of your metrics, but it just won't give you things like speed and lifts and things like that. And then third one was about what happens if my phone dies. So yes, currently, if your phone dies, that is tracking over. So at that point, it won't be able to track anymore because it needs to communicate with your phone and then use the onboard processing to then add the machine learning algorithms that work out all that sensor data. So unless it can transfer that, unfortunately, no, that will then stop. But when you're comparing battery usage between Carv and other sort of ski tracking apps, Carv is actually really battery efficient because we are using far less phone sensors. So we're not using all of that data that other ski tracking apps need because we have hardware. So it's equivalent to then syncing data through earphones and things like that over Bluetooth. So it'll draw less battery, but if the unfortunate event happens where your phone dies, unfortunately, yes, that is the end of the day. So I'd always recommend bringing a battery pack. Whether you're using Carv or not, it's great to have it on the mountain.
Great. I think we should probably move on, or we've got a lot of open questions on the Q&A. I'm really sorry, guys, typing as quickly as I can to answer those. But yeah, do drop us a message on Facebook or join the community if you can't get your question answered, because my fingers are flying. Okay, Jasper, do you want to hand over to our next section?
Cool. All right. Yes, super excited for this. I hope you've all got your nice stretchy pants on. I have mine for sure, because you're going to need it for this next bit. So I'd love to introduce you to Christine. So Christine is a Carv user and CSAA level 4 instructor based out in Canada, who has been teaching people how to do ski yoga for the last 11 years. And Christine has very graciously agreed to come on and help us out for today and put together a special course specifically for Carv. So follow along at home. Christine will talk you through some of the props that you can use optionally. And this will be recorded as well, so you'll be able to access it after the fact. But yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Christine.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jasper. And thank you to the whole Carv team for inviting me to take part. I'm really excited to share this with you all. So I started teaching my ski clients yoga many years ago because a lot of them I discovered they had everything they needed in terms of fitness, determination. They were putting time in on snow, but they were held back from reaching their skiing goals by a lack of joint range of motion. And so I started doing a lot of research on anatomy and kinesiology and pairing that with my yoga practice knowledge. At the same time, I was starting to teach a lot of my fellow colleagues who, unfortunately, a lot of them had sustained big injuries. So my practice is really all about a yoga practice that's restorative, that optimizes joint range of motion. And it's different than your typical pretzel yoga. So I studied Hatha yoga in Rishikesh, India. And in India, yoga is all about balance. In fact, there's an ancient Sanskrit phrase, Sitram Sukham Asanam, which means this yoga pose should be stable and comfortable. So the essence of this practice is not going to be about trying to be super flexible. It's going to be about being attentive and being able to feel your body moving through space with a greater level of sensitivity. So for this practice, we're going to be focusing on the hips. I'm going to be showing you poses that will help with the hip flexors, the lateral glutes, the hamstrings, and the adductor muscles. You can, if you want, grab a chair for your practice. And you may choose to have a blanket, yoga blocks if you have them, but you don't need them. And if you have a foam roller, that's an awesome tool. But if you don't have a foam roller, you can use a can of soup. And last but not least, one of my favorite devices for yoga for skiers is a lacrosse ball or a baseball or softball. So if you want to grab those things, you can. But if you want to just watch and follow along without props, that's okay. Again, this will be recorded so you can practice at home. So first of all, I'm going to ask you all to come onto your backs. And while lying on your back, please draw your right knee up towards your chest. Now start to draw small circles in the air with your right knee. And it can be helpful to close your eyes as you do this. The goal is to keep your pelvis anchored to the back of the yoga mat. And then changing directions, you may choose to make the circles a little bigger, but you don't have to. If you experience crunching and popping is actually not uncommon. But if it is painful, please don't do this. Now we'll switch to the left leg. So drawing your knee up to your chest, drawing some small circles in the air. And in yoga, a key principle is connecting your breath with your movement. Your breath actually has a huge impact on your autonomic nervous system. Changing the direction of the circles. And the general principle is, if you can lengthen the exhale relative to the inhale, that has a calming effect on the nervous system. So in our practice, we aim to breathe that way. And stopping that, drawing your knees into your chest and just rocking side to side on your sacrum and rolling to your side to come up. Making your way onto all fours. Now placing your wrists under your shoulders and a narrow stance with the knees. Inhaling. And as you exhale, dropping your hips to the left edge of your mat. And inhale, come up to neutral. And exhale, drop the pelvis over to the right edge of the mat. And coming up through neutral. We'll repeat this a few times. And what you might notice is you feel a nice stretch through the lateral glutes and the side body. Oh my goodness. And if it's the end of your ski day, you might really feel that. So the hip joint is so important. It's important for rotation, for edging, and for pressure control. And all of those things in combination lead to good balance. So if you do nothing in your prep for your ski day, but these 4 poses for your hips, that will be really helpful. So we'll stop that movement. And then we're going to anchor the hands firmly, curl your toes under to lift your pelvis up and back, keeping your knees bent. So this posture is called downward facing dog. And a lot of people will really focus on trying to get the heels to the floor. But for skiers, often our calves are so tight, that's not going to happen. And honestly, the heels coming to the floor is overrated. You don't have to do that. We'll shift our weight into the left hand, left foot, and then take the right foot forward to lower your left knee down. Now here's where you might want to have a blanket to cushion your knee, as our goal is going to be to bring the torso upright to get a stretch in the left hip flexor. Sometimes I'll also use a chair for this so that I can focus on lifting my belly, dropping my tailbone. And as I sink forward and down, I make sure I don't extend my right knee past my right ankle. If you want to go deeper, you can interlace your fingers behind your back, roll the shoulders back and shoulder blades down as you lift your chest. Now this one I'll also do in my ski boots with my poles at the ready for balance. And then coming out of that posture, I'm going to press hands into the floor and lift my knee to draw my left foot forward slightly. And then I'm going to turn my left toes out and anchor the left heel down. Coming up to standing, this is where again having a chair handy can be helpful. I draw my right hip bone back, left hip bone forward, and resist the temptation to drop into my low back. I create this muscular engagement to lift, and then I hinge in the right hip to come into a forward fold. Placing hands on the chair back, or keeping them on your hips. Or for bendy people, if you need to go further, you can bring your hands down to your ankle, or maybe even to yoga blocks. Now it's important in this posture that the legs are strong. We're not just hanging off of the joints, but we're actively using the quadriceps to lift the kneecap up. We're pushing into the back edge of the left foot, and we're elongating the spine. Now coming out of that posture and flipping the left heel up, the next pose is going to be a modification of a really popular one called pigeon pose. So I'm going to do this in a really gentle way because a lot of skiers have knee injuries. Pigeon pose can actually be detrimental if you have a knee injury. So here's a way to do it that's very gentle. So I'm going to have a very tight angle at the knee, my toenails resting on the mat, and then I extend my pelvis back, turn my torso towards the diagonal front corner of my mat, and bring my forearms down. Then if I just drop my pelvis, my right glutes towards the mat, I'll start to experience a stretch without putting a lot of torque in the knee. Now, if you're someone who's experiencing fairly healthy knees right now, and you want to go deeper, you can deepen the pose by bringing your shin bone closer to parallel with the front edge of the mat. Now this will create a stretch in the lateral glutes, deep in the hip. Oh, and it's one of my favorites, I have to admit. Now we'll come out of this pose in a really gentle way, just rolling onto the outer right hip and then releasing your left leg to come forward for Baddha Konasana, cobbler's pose. So for this one, I recommend practicing with a blanket, because our aim is going to be to bring the soles of the feet together and drop the knees down. And for some, if the hips are tight, you might find your spine rounds. So elevating the pelvis makes this a little easier. And with the soles of the feet touching, I inhale, I lengthen my spine. And with my exhale, I hinge in the hips and come forward. Now for each of us, we have different ranges of motion. And it's not just a product of the pliability of the tissue. It has to do with the shape of the skeleton also. So it really doesn't matter what the pose looks like. What matters is that you're getting the therapeutic benefits. And then coming out of that pose. And we will repeat the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to come back to all fours and curling my toes under, moving the pelvis up and back into downward facing dog. Now this time I'm going to bend my left knee deeper as I reach the right heel towards the mat. And again, it doesn't matter if it touches. And then I'm going to switch, bend the right knee deeply and straighten the left knee. And then I'm going to alternate between these. That's just a nice thing to do for the calf, the Achilles tendon, and for the feet. As our bodies have these little sensors throughout all the tissue, these proprioceptors, that are activated just by moving the joints through their full range of movement. So just by doing this, I'm literally waking up the sensors in my feet, which are going to help with my balance. Now shifting weight to the right hand, right foot, I draw my left foot forward and bring my right knee down to practice that low lunge, left leg forward. And being really conscious of my alignment, I press evenly into the big toe and the pinky toe side of my left foot. I draw my belly up, tailbone down. And you can, if you want, go further by drawing your arms behind your back, interlacing your fingers, and then drop your shoulder blades as you lift your chest. If your balance feels wobbly, this could be a good one to practice with a chair. And then one more inhale, exhale, releasing hands down to the mat. To pick up the right knee and draw the right foot forward, placing the right foot down, turning the toes out, and then anchoring the right heel down. Coming up to standing in this extended splits pose. I draw my left hip bone back, right hip bone forward, lengthen the low back, activate my legs so I have even pressure on the inner and outer edges of both feet. And with my inhale, I prepare, exhaling, I hinge in the hip. So going back to what I mentioned about the breath, that by extending the length of the exhale, you can have a calming effect on the nervous system. And this works also while you're stretching. If I lengthen the exhale, I actually feel my body drop millimeter by millimeter into the pose, but without me having to force it. And then bending the knee, bringing the hands down, lifting the right heel. And now we're going to draw the left shin down to the yoga mat, extending the right leg back, and then rotating the torso so the belly button points towards the corner of your mat. So this is a baby pigeon pose. It's safer for the knee. It's also a good way to start into pigeon pose. And then slowly over time, you can flex the ankle and introduce different levels of intensity until you get to that point where the shin is close to parallel with the front edge of the mat. Now, I really like this pose. It does multiple things at the same time. It stretches the lateral glutes, the hips. It also stretches the hip flexor on the opposite side. And it grabs your attention. Then we'll come out of pigeon pose. And now, doing a little bit of myofascial release. So if you have a ball, this can be really handy. What we'll do is place the ball, lacrosse ball, tennis ball, baseball is pretty hardcore, but you can use it. I'm going to place it in the lateral glutes, so somewhere between the glute medius, glute minimus. And then I'm just going to drop onto it and lower my knees over the side until I feel the pressure of that ball pressing into the lateral glutes. Now for any skier, this is going to be intense. Pretty much for anybody, but in particular for skiers, this is going to be pretty intense. The beauty about doing it like this is you can adjust that dial just by lifting or lowering the knees. Or if you want to go deeper, you can reposition the lacrosse ball or baseball and then cross your ankle over knee. Then you can kind of explore rolling around, maybe into the piriformis, which is a muscle that helps externally rotate the upper leg bone. And if that one's tight, it can actually prevent people from being able to internally rotate the femur. And that can definitely affect your skiing. So you might be wondering at this time, what about the can of soup? Well, if you don't have a ball handy, you can actually use a can of soup. Position it under your hip and just roll on it. Now you definitely want to be careful that you're not putting too much pressure to overwhelm the structural integrity of the can, but this actually works pretty good. You can also rotate your belly button slightly down, and then this gets into an area called the tensor fasciae latae. It's a really important muscle in skiing. It's important for the alignment of the knee. It's also important for our ability to balance with our body weight predominantly on our outside leg. All right, now we must do both sides, else we walk out into the world unbalanced. So, other side, just working into that space, the glute medius, the glute minimus. Oh my. And what I find so fascinating about yoga practice, it gives me so much valuable information about my body. Like if something is becoming really chronically tight, first of all, that could be because of the way I'm skiing. Something could be going off in the way I'm skiing, but it's also really critical for being able to anticipate injuries. So same as before, if you want to put that ball more into the area of the piriformis, this muscle that goes horizontally in the back of the glutes. And if you're like, oh, I'm not entirely sure where it is, whoa, you will hit a point and you will find it, because it's a really sensitive bit of tissue. This type of work, we want to make sure that we maintain that steady, slow pace of breath. And if you're working with your can of tomatoes, you can do that as well. And of course, if you have a foam roller, you might be wondering at this point, why did I buy a $30 foam roller when I have a can of soup for $2? And then moving so that you're more kind of partially prone position, belly button pointing down towards the mat. And then coming off and making your way into a seated position to close the practice with a bit of an experiment. So in yoga, the physical practice, the asana, the postures, the exercises, that's really just the first step in developing your practice. Where yoga is incredibly powerful is in its ability to help you train your attention and to create better communication between your brain and your body, strengthening the sensitivity of your nervous system and your ability to control it. To show you that, I'd like you to try, please, this experiment where you close your eyes. And I'd like you just to pay attention to your feet. Pay attention to the big toes of both feet. And observe them in as much detail as you can. And now, keeping your eyes closed, draw your right foot up and massage the right toe. Now, stopping that, keeping eyes closed, extend that leg out straight. And again, pay attention to the sensation of the feet. Feeling your big toes. And you may notice it's just easier to feel where your big toe is in space. Opening your eyes. And that, in essence, is precisely what yoga does. It helps you become more sensitive to your body so that you can use it more efficiently when you ski. You can help prevent injuries, and you can maintain a healthy body for longer so that you can shred more aggressively for longer in your skiing career. So that concludes my practice for you tonight. I thank you all so much for your attention and for practicing with me. If you're interested in learning more about my Yoga for Skiers programs, my blog posts, my retreats and workshops, you can visit me at my website, www.flowcoachchristine.com, or at flowcoachchristine on Facebook and Instagram. And I welcome your questions. Feel free to contact me and pass on questions. So with that, I pass it back over to the Carv team.
Thank you so much for that, Christine. That is definitely a first for me. I've never done yoga at 4 a.m. before, but thank you so much. That was really awesome. And I hope everyone else that's following along learned something and had fun. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been really fun. It's been great to see all the engagement with the comments. I've been trying to reply to as many as possible, but we've been talking about the community a little bit, but yeah, Amelia, any final words?
No, but join the community if you do have Facebook. And I've seen probably 7 or 8, I've been keeping a tally, people coming in saying, please move it to Facebook. So in the future, it is definitely something we're going to be considering and seeing how we can achieve it in another way. It probably won't be this season, but it's something we are keeping in mind, because I've loved, as Jasper said, my fingers have been going like the clappers throughout, trying to answer as many of your questions, but I'm aware that I didn't get to all of them, and do just drop us a message if that's the case.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Christine and Jim, thank you so much for helping out. And we will send out the recording in a few days' time. But have a great evening. Thank you so much, everyone, and happy skiing.
Enjoy your evening, guys. Bye.
Bye all. Bye.